What's up? Chris Ryan, Justin Verrier. We're here to talk to you a little bit about the ripple effects of Kevin Durant's injury that he suffered in Game 5 of the NBA Finals. It was a really upsetting moment for Durant, for the Warriors, for everybody who saw it. It sucks. He's one of the best players I've ever seen in my life. I'm sure you would agree. But this injury isn't just an injury. It's something that's going to change the landscape of the league in a lot of huge ways and a lot of subtle ways. That's what we're here to talk about today. I want to talk to you first about Durant, the Warrior. So Justin, Durant gets injured. Prior to the injury, did you think he was going to re-sign with the Warriors? And after the injury, does your mind change at all?
Well, it seemed like everything going into this finals was just that Durant, he wasn't satisfied with whatever he had in Golden State. He went there pursuing some sort of nirvana of basketball that he wasn't getting in Oklahoma City. He thought just winning titles perhaps would kind of alleviate him of whatever concerns that were dogging him. It didn't work. And it seemed like the natural conclusion was that he would go outside of the environment that he had in order to find that. New York was the popular destination everyone brought up because of whatever business interests he has there. Rich Kleiman, also from New York. I mean, Brooklyn came up more recently, especially in conjunction with Kyrie. But it seemed like whatever was driving him out of Golden State.
Yeah.
Now this injury, is he going to want to stay put because that's the most security? And then it gets into this whole dicey situation where, like, well, what contract is he going to sign next? And does it make more sense to do that in Golden State?
Yeah, the Durant story is so interesting because it was almost like he went to the Golden State for aesthetic reasons. Like, he wanted to play a better style of basketball. He felt like that would be the place where he could explore the game at the highest level. And then he gets blamed for ruining the Warriors.
Right.
You know, and so now the narrative behind where he might go after the Warriors was because he was going to go show everybody that he could be the guy on a team and that he didn't need the two best shooters of all time and Draymond Green playing defense and running the point as a point forward. He was going to go off to New York and revive New York basketball at the Garden. That was kind of the thread that we were chasing with his free agency this summer. It's not to say that that can't happen, but now let's go to the other teams. You're the Knicks. You've been building up to this summer. It feels like every summer they've been building up to this summer, but you're building up to this summer. Do you just make the deal? Do you make the offer to Durant?
It's a great question. I guess it depends on what the window is for the Knicks. I think it actually makes more sense for a team like the Knicks to bring him in, sign him to a long-term deal, and perhaps wait it out. Because what's really driving the Knicks to be successful next season, other than whatever outside expectations they've kind of inflicted upon themselves?
Right.
Like, I mean, they have all this cap space. If they don't sign multiple free agents next summer or this summer, we've been saying, like, the worst it could possibly get is they just keep rolling it over. I wonder if you could just do some sort of middle version of that, where you sign Durant, bring him in, show him that, like, you will give him everything you were going to give him. And if you're the Knicks, quite frankly, like, you probably need to, like, you need every advantage you can get for someone to go and play willingly for James Dolan. Why don't you just bring him in and then perhaps tell him it's a long-term process?
So much of it is about perception with these teams, right? You think about the Lakers. Almost every year, no matter how good or bad the Lakers are, they seem to present themselves or conduct themselves as, well, we're going to automatically be in play for some free agents or from one-away stars on other teams because we're the Lakers and it's Los Angeles and we're the purple and gold. The Knicks don't quite have that vibe.
No.
The Knicks are like, we were building up to this summer, we traded Porzingis, we got more assets, we had all this cap space, we had these young players that we were going to probably try and package to get a third star, and it was all based on Durant. Like, the idea that this was in any way a permutation that they considered is completely, like, that's not the case, man. They thought they were going to get him because there's no way you do that Porzingis. I don't care how they told that story about, like, oh, he said that he was going to go back to Europe if we didn't trade him in 7 days. Like, no way.
Right.
No way.
Well, and what we've been hearing over the past couple days is that maybe Kyrie isn't such a sure thing anymore. It seems more likely, based on the reports that we've heard, that Kyrie is more likely to go to Brooklyn, which leaves Durant as perhaps the only guy they were going to get.
Right.
So if you're not going to go after him, like, what is there out there? Kemba, who's like a New York native, and that would be fun, but, like, that's not going to change your ceiling all that much.
And if you're Kemba, like, honestly, is it that much better to turn down so much money extra from Charlotte to go play for a New York Knicks team that the only thing you'll do is make their draft odds worse, which, yes, I understand the lottery has made it so, like, we flatten the odds a little bit, but a Kemba Walker-led Knicks with R.J. Barrett and Kevin Knox and Dennis Smith Jr. is still a 35-win team at best. Am I right?
It's fun. I mean, I guess the only advantage is, like, you get to play closer to home. Like you have the stage and
I
thus
don't know,
like more
man.
marketing
For the money
advantages.
Charlotte's paying him, he can buy a plane. You know what I mean? Like that's the thing about these situations. Ever since LeBron went to the Heat, we always assume that these free agency moves come in some sort of super team format. And we assume like these guys are all gonna team up in these different places. Maybe we're gonna see a paradigm shift, not because of any kind of like concerted effort on the part of the players to go it alone, but if you take Durant out of the mix, it's like losing a huge share of the free agency pie now.
Yeah, I think that's the most interesting ripple effect you have here, because there are so many teams with cap space, and yet there are so few guys
Worth it.
that are worth
Legitimately worth it.
So
yeah.
there's like, what, 5 to 6 maybe? And that's even a stretch because we're bringing in guys like Kemba Walker and some of these other ones that are kind of on the fringes. We're
Right.
talking about franchise changers. There's probably like 4.
Right.
It's KD, it's Clay, it's
Kawhi.
Kyrie,
And Kawhi.
and Kawhi.
Yeah.
And like, we're taking out one of them, and all of a sudden, like, everyone else is probably scrambling. We just saw the Brooklyn Nets make a trade specifically designed to open up a second max cap slot.
Right.
And so if they don't have that, like, yeah, they could divert it elsewhere, but you could have easily just signed a max player and also brought back D'Angelo Russell and
Yeah.
been no worse off for it.
The feeling that everybody had after the Brooklyn Nets made that trade for Taurean Prince was that they were creating enough room to sign Kyrie +1. And if that +1 was Durant, then that +1 was Durant. Now, the interesting ripple effect of Durant's injury and his not necessarily not becoming a free agent, but maybe people being a little less certain about investing in him is the way it bumps up that second tier guy like a Jimmy Butler up a spot. So then does the market for Butler, even though economically it can only be one of two choices for Butler, it's either more money and years with Philly or less money and years somewhere else, but like maybe the pitches get a little bit more intense. Maybe the wooing process gets a little bit more intense. Maybe someone like Brooklyn is like, look, we got to pair somebody with Kyrie because we don't have enough people here to keep him happy. You know that with guys like Kyrie, with guys like Jimmy, you do have to deal with the reality that they might become dissatisfied with their surroundings and ask for a trade.
Right, and the other thing it does is if you aren't interested in any of those guys, the Jimmys, the Tobias Harrises, or if you're just not on their list, maybe the trade market becomes way more robust.
Yeah.
And that's where I start to wonder what happens with Anthony Davis. So on the one hand, you have more interest in Davis. Perhaps like if you can't get a Durant, Davis is the next best option. Because like, yeah, you have to give up more in terms of assets, but he is a player who is way younger, definitely has his injury concerns, but you can go forward and know you have a cost certainty. On the other hand, there's just like less incentive for teams to, if you get one of these free agents, to go out and get a AD to pair with him. So for instance, let's say the Knicks land Durant. Are they gung-ho about trading everything in their coffers, all those Dallas first-round picks, their own first-round picks, in order to go after AD?
Yeah.
Probably not. And then if there aren't as many suitors for AD, then perhaps the market depreciates, and so you start looking back at the trade deadline, and it's like, oh, by the way, maybe the Pelicans really should have taken that Lakers offer. That was probably the best one on the board.
There are so many what-ifs. That trade market becomes much more interesting right now because you do have less of Kawhi Leonard. And you're talking about a couple of guys who are really franchise changers. But what that Kawhi Leonard trade showed is that if you're a team that's bold enough and brave enough, you never know where you might wind up by acquiring one of those guys. So the Anthony Davis trade market might hit a fever pitch in the next couple of weeks because like if you're Boston, even if you've been told every day he's not re-signing with you, if you can get David Griffin to let him go, maybe you just say hell with it. Let's see him say no after Boston is in the NBA Finals.
Yeah, Boston is definitely one of the prime candidates. I also wonder if some of those teams that we're just not talking about start to pop up. So you look at the teams who have a combination of young assets and veterans. And for me, I'm starting to look at the Western Conference.
Yeah.
The Western Conference, all of a sudden,
I was going to say Portland.
they're not wide open. Portland makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
So you have CJ McCollum,
Yeah.
maybe a Zach Collins. You would probably have to go way into your draft pick, like kind of reserves, in order to put together something competitive. But as we said, if the bidding is depreciated, all of a sudden those offers start to look way more interesting.
If anything, I think the Western Conference is going to get even more bullish because they're like, look, the Warriors are beatable.
Yeah.
Like, the Warriors are a year older. If Durant opts in for that 31, they're pretty much tied up with what they've got right now.
Yep.
To say nothing of, I don't know if that messes up the Klay Thompson negotiations, because that's another free agent that we haven't even talked about. But if the West feels more open, do teams in the Western Conference try to go for it right now, a la Toronto in the Eastern Conference last year?
I mean, Houston is an interesting subject. I mean, we talked about them pretty recently, just like how maybe they would blow things up. Maybe what they had wasn't good enough, but all of a sudden, perhaps if the Warriors aren't the Warriors, then all of a sudden this is a good enough team to like just go with what you have for one more year, especially when you can't do much with Chris Paul. And I don't even know if you can do much with Clint Capella, considering how little he played in the playoffs. Denver is one that I'm super interested in. They have all of these young guys, but as we saw in the playoffs, there's probably a ceiling to what a team that doesn't play defense at a high enough level, that probably doesn't have a sure enough thing. Like Jamal Murray still has a lot of untapped potential, but is he ever like one of these frontline level guys who can win you playoff games or multiple playoff games? I don't know. If we want to flip back to the East though, let me throw this out. What if the Raptors turn some of these other guys and pair Kawhi Leonard with Anthony Davis?
It's in play.
OG Anunoby, some of these younger guys, you give them a
Would you
veteran.
have to trade Siakam?
Probably.
So you're basically like stripping it down. Gasol would probably opt back in. You sign Kawhi to a 1-and-1 or whatever.
Yeah.
Bring in Davis and say, don't even worry about your free agency yet. And you go Lowry, Davis, Kawhi, and Gasol.
I mean, I don't know how much you'd have to dip in, like, to some young players.
I think it would have to be the entire
Siakam, OG, those are two really good players. And as we saw from like a Adrian Wojnarowski report, the framework of what the Pelicans are looking for right now is an all-star and someone with all-star potential. Siakam would probably make...
Siakam and Zion is a sick front court.
That's pretty incredible.
Would you be more into Siakam, OG, Fred VanVleet, and whatever picks are around, or the Lakers offer of Ball, Ingram, Kuzma?
It's a great question. I think the Lakers having that number 4 pick now in this year's draft changes things. It's crazy it is to say. Like for a while we thought that this was a 3-player draft, but all of a sudden some of these guys in the middle ground are starting to look a little bit more interesting. Darius Garland is apparently the next
Hunter.
Like Kyrie Irving or whatever we're saying about him now. But the Lakers definitely has more sex appeal, for lack of a better word, and they play a style that probably would fit Alvin Gentry's system a little bit better, but there's much more call certainty with the Raptors guys, because we've seen Siakam do this in the playoffs, and even though he has kind of disappeared at times, he's still only 25.
Right. I think personally, like if Masai Ujiri is able to land an Anthony Davis the year after he lands Kawhi Leonard, he should probably be doing something more important than running the Raptors.
You think that's like running the Wizards?
No, I just think he should just probably be running the White House or something like that. Do we have anything else that we're seeing like direct lines back to Durant?
I mean, I think if you want to circle all the way back, the Warriors.
Yeah, let's do that.
I mean, just like what else happens there? It just seems like if the emotional stakes become the most important thing here, if this somehow brings the team together, which it seemed to after Durant went down, Curry seemed visibly shaken, Klay Thompson spoke in very whimsical terms about just like what Durant means to him and all this
Bob
other
Myers
stuff.
obviously in tears,
I do wonder if that has some sort of effect. Like maybe all the stuff that had been building up to this point, now that doesn't matter as much. Now they're all on the same page. Klay Thompson doesn't look elsewhere. Boogie Cousins, you're probably gonna lose regardless, but all of a sudden, like, you're looking at the same team again. And like, as weird as it is to say, maybe that's the silver lining, that they found something through this kind of tragedy, quite honestly.
Yeah, I mean, it could be galvanizing, it could also split them apart. So we'll have to see what happens there. Either way, Durant's injury changes the league, as you can see, and it changes what's gonna happen in the Eastern Western Conference, what people think all of a sudden they might be in the market for what free agents, and also it changes the market for those free agents. Guys like Jimmy Butler, second tier guys maybe right outside of that top 5, top 7 elite player, all of a sudden become that much more valuable and that much more desired if you take one of the number 1 free agents off the board. For Justin Verrier, I'm Chris Ryan. This has been the ripple effects of Kevin Durant's injury.
Hello, and thanks for watching this video. If you want to watch more of the Ringers NBA content on the YouTubes, click like or subscribe and do whatever you want to do with this box right here. This box. What's in the box?
Whatever you want to do.